I was 74 the first time my daughter told me to stay out of sight on Mother's Day. She didn't say it cruelly. That's what made it worse. She said it the way people speak when they've already decided you don't count. Just rest downstairs, Mama, she said, adjusting the flowers on the dining table like I was a piece of clutter that didn't match the arrangement. We have guests coming. Downstairs meant the spare room near the laundry, the one without windows, the one that smelled faintly of bleach and damp cardboard, the room I had once used for storage, back when the house was still mine in spirit, not just on paper. I nodded. Old habits die hard. Women of my generation were raised on nodding. Upstairs, heels clicked, glasses chimed, laughter floated down the stairs like perfume, sweet, expensive, not meant for me. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed and folded my hands the way I used to in church, waiting for permission to exist. This house had my fingerprints in its bones. Every corner knew my voice once. I had signed the checks, paid the taxes, held the deed in my hands the year my husband died, and the silence nearly swallowed me whole. But grief makes women generous in dangerous ways. I let my daughter and her husband move in after the funeral. Temporary, they said, just until things settled. I told myself that motherhood didn't end just because the children grew tall enough to look you in the eye. On that Mother's Day afternoon, I heard a toast upstairs. To family, someone said. I smiled at the irony and pressed my palm flat against the thin wall beside my bed. The vibration of music traveled through it, reminding me that I was still alive, even if I was no longer visible. Later, when the house finally quieted, I went upstairs for water. My daughter stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, irritation already loaded in her posture. You could have waited, she said. People were still here. I looked at her then, not as my child, but as a woman who had forgotten who laid the foundation beneath her feet. I was thirsty, I said. She turned away, conversation over. That night, I lay awake listening to the pipes hum and thought about all the Mother's Days before this one. Handmade cards, sticky fingers, my husband cooking breakfast badly and laughing at himself. A life where I mattered. The next morning, I opened the folder I hadn't touched in years. The deed was still there. My name was still on it. And something inside me, quiet, patient, long underestimated, stood up straight for the first time in a decade. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't confront anyone. I made tea and smiled and played the part they'd assigned me. Frail, forgetful, harmless. But behind that smile, plans were forming the way storms do. Slowly, invisibly, inevitably. By the next Mother's Day, no one would be locking me away, and the house would remember who its mother really was. I stayed sweet after that, so sweet it could have fooled a snake. The next morning, I moved through the kitchen like a shadow with manners, rinsing my cup, wiping the counter, letting the silence make me look small. My daughter liked it that way. People who need control are always most comfortable when you act like you don't want any. Her husband, Andre, came in wearing that pressed shirt confidence men borrow when they don't actually own anything. He opened the fridge, stared inside like he was inspecting inventory, and didn't look at me once. They talked above my head about brunch, about the guest list, about what kind of flowers looked higher end. The house had become a stage, and I was the unwanted prop stored off camera. I listened. That was my first weapon. Because when you're old, folks assume your hearing goes before your dignity does. They'll say things around you they would never say to you. They'll forget you're still collecting evidence with every breath. I carried my toast into the little downstairs room, my rest space, and I sat there with the plate warm in my lap like it was a baby bird I had to keep alive. The walls were thin enough to tell me everything. Every laugh upstairs, every argument whispered behind closed doors, every time my daughter said my name like it was a bill she didn't want to pay. That afternoon I went to the mailbox before anyone else could. A habit from my teaching years. In my day, mail mattered. Mail was truth in paper form, and there it was, an envelope with my name on it. My full name. The name I'd had before I was somebody's mother, before I became the woman who swallowed her own needs so other people could eat first. I opened it slowly at the kitchen table. The way you open something when you already know it's going to bruise you. A credit card statement. $3,000 and change. Catering. Decor rentals. Floral design. Their Mother's Day performance. Charged to me. For a moment I didn't feel anger. I felt something colder. The kind of cold you feel when you realize a person isn't thoughtless. They're intentional. They hadn't just hidden me. They had used me. Like my age made me a loophole. Like my love made me a wallet. I could have marched upstairs and held that bill in my daughter's face, but confrontation is a fire. It burns everything, including the person holding the match. I didn't want a fire, I wanted precision. So I folded the statement neatly and slid it into my old Bible, the one I kept in my drawer, not because I was holy, but because I was desperate for something to hold me steady. Paper between pages, truth waiting for its moment. Then I went to my room and did the quietest thing a woman can do when she's been underestimated her whole life. I made calls, not dramatic calls, not crying calls, efficient ones. First I called Harriet. Harriet had taught third grade across the hall from me for 27 years. She'd seen children lie, she'd seen parents pretend, and she'd seen women shrink themselves until they disappeared. When she retired, she didn't slow down, she got sharper, started selling houses like she was selling justice. She picked up on the first ring. Evelyn. Her voice warmed on my name. You okay, honey? I looked around the little room downstairs where they kept me like a hidden coat. No, I said softly, but I'm about to be. There was a pause. Then Harriet's tone changed. Not softer, stronger, like a woman setting her cup down. What did they do? I told her everything. The locked door, the stay downstairs, the credit card statement, the way my daughter spoke to me like I was in her way inside my own walls. Harriet didn't gasp. She didn't say, oh my goodness, like a person who plans to do nothing. She said, whose name is on the deed? And that right there, those words felt like someone opened a window. My name, I answered. Harriet exhaled, almost a laugh, but not a happy one. Then baby, that house is still yours. Yes, I whispered, it is. Do you want to sell? I didn't answer immediately, because even after everything, the word sell felt like cutting a piece of my life out with scissors. My husband's laughter had lived in those walls. My daughter's first steps, Christmas mornings, Sunday dinners when my knees were young. But then I thought of Mother's Day upstairs. The toast, the music, the way they didn't even offer me a chair. I thought of that credit card statement, and I remembered something my own mama used to say when she watched people take advantage of her kindness. Baby, they'll drink you dry and call you a cracked glass. I looked at the damp wall beside my bed and felt my spine firm up like a straightened paperclip. I don't want to sell, I said. I want to be free. Harriet's voice softened again. Freedom's got paperwork, Evelyn. I know, I said. Then she told me about cash buyers. Investors circling my zip code like hawks. People who could close fast and clean. No weeks of showings. No strangers stomping through my memories. And suddenly the idea didn't feel like loss. It felt like a door. That night at dinner, my daughter slid a plate in front of me without meeting my eyes. Andre scrolled his phone and chewed like I wasn't sitting there. They talked about another gathering, a small one, a networking brunch. Andre finally looked up at me then, his face tight with forced politeness. Mom, he said. He called me Mom sometimes, like a costume. We're thinking about safety. My daughter's fork paused midair. Her eyes flicked to his like, don't mess this up. Andre cleared his throat. Sometimes you wander at night, right? We just don't want you confused. We don't want interruptions. Interruptions. That's what they called my existence. We installed a keypad lock, he said quickly, as if saying it faster would make it kinder. On the basement door. Just temporary. For everyone's peace of mind. I stared at him. A keypad lock. Not a suggestion. Not a request. A cage. My daughter added, it's not a big deal, Mama. It's safer. You'll have everything you need down there. Everything I need. Like I was a pet. Like I wasn't the reason this house existed in the first place. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing the crack in my heart. I simply nodded again. And in that nod, I made my second vow. If they wanted to lock a door on me, I would show them what it feels like when life locks one back. That night, in my downstairs room, I held my phone close like a secret candle. Harriet texted me a name, a lawyer, real estate, fast and discreet. I stared at the message a long time, feeling my pulse settle into something steady. The kind of steady that doesn't come from peace. It comes from decision. Because you don't have to be loud to be dangerous. Sometimes the most dangerous woman in the room is the one everyone thinks has already gone quiet. And as I listened to the keypad lock click upstairs, testing, practicing, claiming, something inside me whispered back, calm as a knife. They just taught me exactly what kind of war this is, and I've lived long enough to finish it. I didn't sleep much after that. Not because I was afraid, though fear still lived in me like an old scar that ached when weather changed. I didn't sleep because my mind was moving, clicking into place, like dominoes lined up straight for the first time in years. Upstairs, I could hear them testing that keypad lock again. A soft beep, another beep, the dull final clunk of a bolt sliding home. It's a strange thing hearing your own house decide you're not allowed to pass through it. I lay there in the basement room they called my suite, staring at the ceiling where the light from the upstairs hallway leaked through the vents. I thought about all the doors I'd opened for my daughter in her life, college applications, job connections, second chances after bad choices. I thought about how a mother's love can become a habit so deep you don't realize it's turning into a leash until someone yanks it. Around 2 a.m., I got up and moved carefully so the floorboards wouldn't complain. Old bones know how to be quiet. We've had practice. I pulled my husband Frank's old metal file box out from under my bed. It was dented on one corner from the day he dropped it, moving it into the attic. He'd laughed about it, called it battle damage. The lock still worked. Frank was like that. He believed in things that lasted. Inside, wrapped in a faded dish towel, was the deed. I held it in my hands for a long time like it might be warm. My name sat there on the paper, plain and unromantic, but it was mine. My proof, my backbone in ink. And tucked behind it, still clipped like a bookmark, was the agreement our lawyer had prepared years ago, back when Lana and Andre were smiling wide and calling me Mama, with sugar on their tongues. The whole thing had been framed as protection, tax reasons, asset reasons, just until everything stabilizes, they'd said. Life didn't stabilize, it just revealed. I set the papers on my lap and let the quiet speak. Then I opened my phone, not to play solitaire, not to check weather, not to scroll through other people's grandbabies. I opened notes, and I started a list. Not a dramatic list, a clean one. Dates, times, names, incidents. Basement door locked during dinner party. Credit card charge, catering $3,000 plus. Keypad lock installed without consent. Every time they spoke to me like I was a nuisance. Every time they withheld a meal, or tossed it down the stairs like I was a dog. Every time they used my name to buy themselves comfort. People think revenge is screaming, breaking things, calling the police with shaking hands. Sometimes revenge is a woman writing things down, because the truth looks different when it's organized. By morning, I was tired, but I was clear, and clarity is a kind of strength that doesn't beg for permission. When Lana came downstairs around 9, she was still in her robe, hair wrapped, face tight with the irritation of someone who thinks the world owes her quiet. She stepped over a basket of laundry like it offended her, and called down the stairs without coming all the way. "Mama," she said, "don't come up today. We have people coming to drop off rentals." I didn't answer right away. I let her sit in the discomfort of my silence. Then I called up, sweet as syrup, "Okay, baby." Her shoulders relaxed. She didn't even realize she'd been holding tension. That's what happens when you're used to someone fighting you. You don't know what to do when they stop. She went back upstairs, satisfied. I waited 10 minutes. Then I did what I'd been doing for weeks without them noticing. I watched. Through the small basement window, I saw the rental truck pull up. Chairs, linen, glassware, all of it for another performance, another day of pretending. I watched Andre step outside and slap the delivery man on the shoulder like they were friends. I watched him talk big with that corporate grin, and then I watched him pull out his wallet. My wallet in a way. My house, my credit, my dignity. By noon they were distracted, running around, setting up, arguing over napkins like napkins were the reason their life was falling apart. That's when I slipped out. I had a key they didn't know I still carried, an old spare I'd hidden in the lining of my coat years ago, back when I still thought hiding things from family was sinful. Turns out sometimes hiding is survival. I walked 2 blocks to the corner pharmacy because nothing looked suspicious about an old woman going to buy vitamins. From there I called Harriet. "I have the deed," I told her. "Good," she said. "I already spoke to Boone. He can see you today." Boone's office was downtown in a building that smelled like carpet cleaner and ambition. Harriet met me in the lobby like a bodyguard in church shoes. She hugged me once, quick, firm, and led me inside. Mr. Boone was not warm. He wasn't rude either. He was precise. The kind of man who doesn't waste words because words cost money. He read the deed, read the agreement, looked at me over his glasses. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "you are the sole legal owner." I felt my chest lift like I'd been holding my breath for years without noticing. He continued, "Your daughter and her husband have no recorded interest, no life estate, no lien in their favor. They are occupants. That's it." Harriet leaned back, eyes bright, almost smiling. I asked the question that mattered. "If I sell, can they stop me?" Boone's mouth barely twitched. "No." Just like that. A no that sounded like a door closing. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. That surprised me most. "I want a private sale," I said. "No listing, no signs, no for sale in the yard. I don't want strangers walking through my memories." Harriet nodded like she'd already expected it. Boone said, "We can do an off-market transaction. Cash buyer, fast close." How fast? I asked. He looked at his calendar. 2 weeks, if we push. 2 weeks. 14 days. That's how long it would take for their little kingdom to evaporate. My heart didn't race. It settled, because once you make a decision like that, the fear stops barking. It realizes it can't lead anymore. Harriet slid 2 sheets of paper toward me. Offers, she whispered. I blinked at the numbers. One was higher, one was cleaner. Both were more money than Lana and Andre had ever seen without a loan attached. I thought about that keypad lock. I thought about being told to stay in the basement while guests complimented the chandelier I'd paid for. I thought about the credit card bill, and I chose the higher offer. Not because I needed the money, because they needed the lesson. Back at the house, I returned the same way I left. Quiet. Unnoticed. A ghost with paperwork. The brunch started at 2. Music. Laughter. Champagne poured like it could wash away character. I stayed downstairs like they ordered, because my job wasn't to make a scene. My job was to let the scene make itself. 2 days later, the first legal notice went up. Mr. Boone timed it like a surgeon. A tenant termination notice posted on the front door. Clean language. Cold language. The kind of paper that doesn't care how pretty your dining room is. I was in the basement when I heard Andre find it. What the hell is this? He shouted. Paper ripped. Footsteps stomped. Lana's voice shrieked. Is this a mistake? I smiled into my soup. Not because I enjoyed their panic, because for the first time it wasn't mine. That evening Lana came downstairs for the first time in days. She didn't knock. She didn't ask. She burst in like a storm that forgot whose roof it was under. Her face was pale, eyes wild, hair pulled back like she'd been running. Mama, she said, voice sharp. What is going on? There's a notice. It says the house has been sold. I looked up from my book slowly, like a woman who had all the time in the world. Sold? I repeated soft. Yes, she snapped. And people are calling me. They got some email about an open house, my friends, Andre's co-workers. Everybody's asking questions like we're SAG, like you're frauds, her face said. I closed my book carefully, placed it beside me. Then I asked, did you use my credit card again? She froze. That told me everything. Her mouth opened, then closed. Andre's footsteps thundered down the stairs behind her, his face red with rage and humiliation. He pointed at me like I was the villain in his story. You did this, he said. I didn't flinch. I stood up slow. My knees complained, but my spine didn't. I did what? I asked. Andre threw the torn notice toward me. This eviction thing, this sale, this is insane. You can't just sell the house. I tilted my head, gentle as a grandmother correcting a child's manners. Can't? I echoed. Lana stepped forward, eyes shining with panic now. Mama, stop. This is our home. You promised. I walked to my little file box, unlocked it, pulled out one crisp paper, and when I turned back, I held it like communion. The deed, I said. Andre's face shifted first, confusion, then doubt. Lana's breath caught when she saw it. I handed it to her, read the name, I said quietly. Her eyes scanned frantic, then slower, then she went still. My name, only my name. She looked up at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You wouldn't, she whispered like I was breaking some unspoken rule. I stepped closer until she could smell the peppermint on my breath. I already did, I said. Andre's voice cracked. Evelyn, be reasonable. Reasonable. I cut in softly, and somehow soft sounded sharper than yelling. You put a keypad lock on my door. Lana flinched like I'd slapped her, but I wasn't done. You told me to stay hidden while guests ate in my dining room. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the kind that meant remorse. They were the kind that meant consequence. And you used my credit card like I was a bank that doesn't speak. Andre's hands curled into fists. We needed. No, I said. You wanted. Silence swallowed the basement. Even the pipes seemed to listen. Then I did the coldest thing I'd ever done to my own child. I looked at my watch. You have 12 days until closing, I said. After that, the new owners take possession. Lana's voice turned thin. Where are we supposed to go? And that question almost cracked me. Because once I would have answered it. Once I would have fixed it. Once I would have folded my dignity into a napkin so my daughter could eat without guilt. But then I pictured that keypad lock again. I pictured my own daughter turning a key on me like I was something shameful. So I answered the only honest way. That, I said quietly, is not my problem anymore. Andre lunged forward one step like he might intimidate me. Harriet was right. People like him rely on your fear to keep them tall. I lifted my chin. You raise your voice in my face again, I told him, and I'll add harassment to the list. He stopped. Because men like that know paperwork is scarier than fists. They left the basement in a rush of fury, slamming the door like it was mine to be hurt by. I sat back down, and for the first time in months, my hands stopped shaking. The next week was quiet warfare. They tried everything. Andre called banks, lawyers, anyone who would listen, but you can't refinance what you don't own. Lana tried crying.
tried apologizing, tried reminding me of Mother's Day cards from 10 years ago, like paper could undo a keypad lock. And I kept moving the same way I always had, quiet, measured, certain. The day before closing, Harriet texted me 2 words, funds cleared. I stared at the message until my eyes blurred. Not from sadness, from release, because the hardest part wasn't selling the house. The hardest part was accepting that my daughter had already sold me out years ago, and I'd just been living in the unpaid balance. Closing day arrived with rain. Of course it did. The sky always seems to know when a life is changing. I didn't go back to the house that morning. Harriet had already gotten me a temporary suite in an extended stay hotel, clean and bright, with windows that didn't feel like prison bars. At 1:15 p.m., Harriet called. "It's done," she said. I sat down on the edge of the bed, like my legs forgot how to hold me. "And I whispered. "And they're losing their minds," she said, and I could hear the satisfaction she was trying not to show. "Sheriff's there, locksmith too. New owners are moving in today." I closed my eyes, not because I wanted to imagine Lana on the curb, but because I wanted to imagine my own future, a life where doors opened for me again. By 3 I did go back, just once, not to gloat, to reclaim my ending. My Uber pulled up to the curb and there they were, my daughter and her husband sitting on the sidewalk, surrounded by mismatched boxes and suitcases, and the ugly truth of public consequence. Andre looked like someone had peeled his pride off in strips. Lana's mascara had turned her face into a watercolor of shame. They saw me step out of the car and both stood at the same time, like my presence pulled them up by strings. "Mama," Lana started, voice breaking. I didn't answer. I walked past them, up my old front steps, and there on the porch stood the new owners, a young couple, nervous, polite, holding each other's hands like they were about to step into a dream. I smiled at them, real, warm, because they hadn't done anything wrong. "I just wanted to welcome you," I said, and I held out a small dish towel bundle Harriet had told me to bring. Inside was sweet potato bread, the same recipe Frank used to beg me to make in the fall. The young woman's eyes softened. "Oh my gosh, thank you. You'll be happy here," I told them. "This house has good bones. It just needed the right people living in it." And then I turned and walked back down the steps. I paused beside Lana and Andre, just long enough for them to feel the air change. They looked up at me like I was a stranger. I gave them a small nod, polite, final. Then I got back into the Uber. As the car pulled away, I watched the locksmith changing the locks. Click, turn, reset, a new code, a new key, and I realized something that made my throat tighten, not with grief, but with the strange tenderness of truth. They locked me in a basement because they thought I was a burden, but all they really did was remind me I still had the power to open my own door. And once you remember that, nobody can ever truly lock you up again.